The main frames, which may be called the foundations of the engine, arrive in the form of flat steel plates weighing 3 tons. This slotting machine eats through 10 plates at a time. Drilling the plates to take the various rivets and bolts is done by a multi-boring machine. Cutting, slotting, drilling, and the final trimming reduces the weight from 3 tons to 2 1/4. Now the plate is guided into position alongside its twin. Foundry work is rather paradoxical. It is what isn't there that matters. A mold eventually consists of an ordered assembly of spaces into which the molten metal is poured. Casting is worrying work. The cupola has to be tapped at precisely the right moment, and the 4 tons of white-hot seething metal taken to the site of the cast immediately. The critical moment arrives. Over she goes. The aperture into which the metal is poured goes by the name of the runner box. The foundry foreman takes up his position, and carefully watching gives the signal to pull the plugs immediately the cast is complete. This allows the gases given off by the hot metal to escape. Metal may set too quickly near these plug holes, and these men carrying out an operation called feeding are preventing this from happening. 1 or 2 days to cool, and the mold is ready for breaking open. A crane fixed to the actual cylinders draws them away from the molding boxes. Men with crowbars break away the sand so carefully and skillfully fashioned by the molders. Our next port of call is the heavy machine shop. Here the cylinders are milled and bored. Holes are drilled to take the securing down bolts to the saddle on which the smoke box will be fixed. Now for our first bit of real engine building. Completed cylinders meet the completed main frames. Add the 2 outside cylinders and the frames are ready. Machinery does not reign supreme everywhere. Here in the smithy, the merry ring of the anvil can still be heard, and brawny arms wielding the hammer still strike sparks from glowing metal. All manner of smaller parts are made in the smithy. Nuts and bolts in all sizes and variety, rivets by the tens of thousands. To many, a boiler is just the round barrel part seen on any engine running about the line, but many are the mysteries hidden beneath its rounded sides. The first step in the assembly of the boiler is the joining together of the 3 sections of the barrel. Rivets, rivets, and more rivets, adding strength to strength, 250 pounds of pressure to the square inch. A modern engine has a big appetite for steam, hence her large grate area of 45 square feet and her high amount of tubing. First to go in is the main steam pipe, through the center of which will later go the rod connecting the regulator handle to the valve. Now the smoke tubes. There are 112 of these, each 19 feet 6 inches long. The 32 superheated tubes which are screwed to the firebox tube plate are the same length. Meanwhile, things have been happening at the other end of the boiler, and some familiar objects have been finding their way onto the fire door plate. This is the regulator handle. We leave the fitters to get on with their job, while we take a look in at the steel foundry. The mold that forms the wheel is made in 2 halves. Sand is placed round the first half pattern. The pattern rammed up, the hole is turned. Over she goes. Remove the baseboard, and out comes the pattern of half of the wheel, to leave a perfect replica of itself in sand. Then the 2 halves of the mold are joined together. The molding boxes are clamped, and our wheel is ready for casting. A few hours to cool, and the mold is ready for breaking open, and so a wheel is born. To its making has gone 3,500 weights of the finest steel and all the skill and experience of the steel foundry men. After the machining has been completed, the wheels are mounted on the wheel press, which joins them to the axle. In pressing wheels onto the axle, this machine exerts a pressure of 150 tons, so that there is no fear that wheel and axle will ever part company. Our next job will be to provide the motion. The various parts of the motion, which can best be described as the moving machinery, start life in either the drop forge or the heavy forge. In the drop forge, the article being manufactured is stamped out in a die. In the heavy forge, the article is shaped largely by the skill of the smith. These men are making a combination lever. A machine trims off the surplus metal and the job is finished. A connecting rod enters the heavy forge as a rectangular block of steel, weighing 1,200 weights. 8 tons of steel hammer descending on steel thuds solidly. Hand, iron, hammer work in perfect unison, shaping, squeezing, forcing the reluctant metal to the will of the hammer and to the will of the men of the forge. 5 times into the fire, 5 times under the hammer. The maximum amount of work must be done at each heat to complete this amazing achievement. Machining the flats is the first operation in the machine shop, a process that gives a glass-like surface to our rods. To reduce the weight of the rod, the sides are fluted, and this is the machine that does the job. Circling the ends, as it is officially called, seems to provide a fitting description of this operation. Holes have to be bored at either end of the rod to take the bushes. Now in the erecting shop, the piecing together of those parts which have been so carefully wrought in the various shops. Heat is precious and has to be conserved, and this is how it's done. The aluminium alloy foil is quite a recent discovery in this lagging process. After the fixing of the lagging sheets, the boiler has to be mounted on the frames waiting to receive it. Number 6207 is really beginning to look like an engine. You don't put wheels on a locomotive. You put the locomotive on the wheels. It is wonderful to see this huge load handled with such ease and placed exactly where it is required. Here she comes, pride of the line and of the men who built her. Soon she will be rushing over the main lines at 80 miles an hour. She's off. A 1,000 men have served her in the making. How many thousands will she serve during her life on the line?